Good morning, my loves. How are you? So I've got a good one for you today. Today we are doing the ID Channel's Evil Lives Here, Season 2, Episode 2. I don't know about you guys, but I'm extremely excited to be moving forward with this. But this is titled, She Made Me Do It. Originally aired January 8th, 2017. So there's a lot to unpack, and we're going to get right to it. So before we really get into it, I just want to say this is one of the better episodes I've seen on Evil Lives Here. And that's not just of the ones that I have covered. That is the ones I've seen before I started talking about it. I was drawn to the series by their newer episodes. So like the one that really got me was the one about the two kids that I talked about on that one episode. I was doing a Get Ready With Me or something, and I started talking about it, and I couldn't stop. And then I realized I enjoyed doing that. That episode is one of the top that I've seen because it made me feel, I felt so, I just wanted to weep for the children in that story. Now this one does the same thing, but a little different. As you will see, it really makes you feel bad for the kids involved, but it just also blows your mind that, anyways, we'll get to it. I do want to give a trigger warning. There is child abuse in this episode. So if that is something that you cannot or do not want to listen to or hear, please feel free to click out. And I hope you pick up another episode that I have posted. So as usual, I will link everything down below in the description box. But let's just get to it. And I'm going to, before I even get started, I'm going to read from my script because wow. Okay, so it starts with the production. That was a little difficult to say. It starts with production, getting a guy mic'd up and ready to go. Well, this is pretty typical, as I've mentioned in the past. So he starts the episode saying that, and I'm going to quote this, because this is a hell of a lead-in, and the reason why I haven't started yet. It is probably one of the best lead-ins I've seen in this series. So this man is talking, and he's telling us how he measures his life now, after the events that took place. So, quote, about once a year I stop and think about where I'm at. Am I on the right track? Here's the question that I have to answer every year. Is the life I have now worth having killed for it? End quote. That's a first. So we are talking to somebody that you automatically know killed somebody. We don't know the story. We don't know why, how, when, or anything, but dang, that's a pretty good hook, right? So, and then he says, looking back at it now, he could say it's easy to see what he did was the wrong choice. 2020 and all that. I wrote this wrong. He's saying that people ask him often if he has remorse or feels bad about what happened, and he says, quote, yeah, I feel bad about what happened. I didn't have what I saw as a viable choice at that moment, end quote. So as he's talking, he's literally starting to cry, and you can see this is very emotional for him, whatever. So I'm going to say, at the beginning of all this, of course, now I know how I feel. I've been through it. Beginning of this, I'm going to say I didn't know how I felt. Was this lead-in caused all kinds of emotions, and it really got my mind working and caught my attention. Like, I knew there was no way I was turning away from this episode. And it really makes my brain and heart hurt as I was trying to figure it out and go through it. I didn't know if I should hate this guy, if I should feel pity for this guy, or praise him for what he's done. I mean, there are so many options. So we're going to get into it and find out. So it tells us that Eric Witt, the guy that's narrating the story that has admitted to killing someone, spent 11 years in prison for what he did when he was 15. Okay. He's telling the story. He looks like he's in his 40s, somewhere around that. He is in a house. He's casually dressed. He's not in prison. So his 11 years he served are up. He's out. He's whatever. So in this episode's dated in 2017. So if he was in 40s then, he's quite a bit older now. I don't know who the victim is, but my mind starts working with, okay, he's 15, he's young, he's impressionable, he's hormonal, he's a stupid kid. I keep going through all of that, but without a lot of that information, it'll be interesting to find out where we go from here. So I'm going to get started with my makeup as I do this, but there's just so much to unpack that if I stop, don't worry about it. It was just meant to be, right? Okay, so Eric is telling everybody to pay attention to the world and the people around them, that there is, I don't know if this is going to be any good. There is, pay attention to the people and everything around them. Okay, he says, in quote, evil lives everywhere, end quote. Which, that's the perfect segue for the title page and the theme song. So, I mean, it was, honestly don't know if it was, I'm sure it was edited that way, but it was a good segue into it, right? So then he starts and says that parents need to be careful as they don't know the lessons that they are teaching their children. Okay. He says that he believes that children at first grow up thinking their parents are gods. Now, I tend to agree with a lot of that. I don't know how much I agree with parents are gods or the kids think parents are gods. But I will say that in the sense of what he's saying is that, you know, parents are an important part that you look up to. Absolutely. A young kid, you know, very young kid. And that is definitely something that, you know, as parents we should be aware of. I mean, everything we do, they take from, right? They build on. We are a large portion of of a child's life. You know, as the parents, you're usually pretty much the whole world. So I get what he's saying, and usually you have to be aware of what you're doing and saying with kids, you know, because they're sponges. They're soaking up everything you say and do. So I do understand what he's saying. I do agree with what he's saying. But now he's saying, and I quote, I was betrayed by the gods in my childhood. So, dramatic? Yes. Effective? Absolutely. So now, you know, we know that whatever has happened, his mom, his dad, you know, whoever raised him or, you know, the gods of his childhood are a huge factor to it, to the story. So, and he says these people, and you know, these people were supposed to protect and raise me in the world they brought me into, so I can function properly in it. Again, I can't say I disagree with that. That's very, you know, very true. So now he quotes, oh no, see, I'm already skipping through, sorry. So now he says he had good times growing up. His father would take him camping, and then when it was just the two of them together, it was great and probably the happiest he remembers ever being, okay? That's good, right? He has some good memories, some good childhood memories. He says that he remembers one time, and I guess, he doesn't tell us how old he is, but I'm going to guess this is probably where some things start changing for him in a sense. Because he says he remembers he's out camping with his father, and his father thought that he was mouthing off to him. Something, the reenactment video was very much like, Dad tells you to go put something over here, and the kid's like, I'll do it when I'm done with this, and all of a sudden you get this big backhand. What child has not said, I'll do it when I'm finished, or something like that? But his father was very mad, got in his face, hauled off, backhanded him across the face, and telling him, you will not backtalk me or I will hit you. Okay. He says his father was a very large and powerful man. And so when he got backhanded, it wasn't a love tap. He said, you know, this was something that you felt, something that was going to rock your world. So that's unfortunate. And I don't know how old he was, but you already know there's abuse. You already know he's going to hit him whenever he thinks there's a misconceived problem. But Eric says that there were still good times, and he'd go out with his dad, have a good time, and he didn't think anything was wrong. You know, his dad was his best friend, and when things were good, it was easy to forget what happened. And he said, at least for a little while. So now we learn that Eric has a brother, and it doesn't tell us a name. It doesn't tell us how many years apart. We do find out later all of this information, but we find out he has a brother, and he's saying that the brother was never expected to do anything. Okay, I didn't elaborate on that, but he said that his father invested all his efforts into his number one son. And he said, quote, I got all the attention, end quote. So that let us know he was the number one son. Okie dokie. But he says that, you know, being number one son or not, there was a very high expectations. And every year the punishments got worse. And he said failure had an increasing cost. So he wasn't allowed to fail. And if he did, it was very bad, right? So we finally learned a little about the mother, because if you're like I am, you're like, where's mom through all this? Why have we not heard anything? And it's just, you know, obviously I know going in that this was just going to continue getting worse, right? So now we learn about the mom. And Eric tells us that whenever his dad would get mad and start beating on him, mom would leave the room. Okay, so I struggle very much with this, as I'm sure you're aware. As a mother, this really infuriates me. My job is to protect my children, not to leave and go to the other room and hide out until the danger has passed. No, I'm stepping in front of a freight train for my child, and mommy here does not. So, you know, and Eric's like, well, you know, she can't jump in front of him because she was going to get hit if she did. And I get this to a point, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So Eric's saying, you know, after the beating, his mom would come in and take care of him and make him feel better. So I get that Eric needed somebody, right? His dad just beat him up or whatever, and mama is the one that he's probably looking towards for solace. But she should have stopped it. She should have done something. So, and this is because he says, and I quote, his mother was the one to put bandages on it or help with ice, or if necessary, take me to the hospital, end quote. So yeah, I'm trying not to lose my mind here, but hello? Seriously? She's the one that will take him to the hospital, and in doing so, you know, making excuses for the father at the hospital, because the hospital's going to want to know what happened, right? So she's making excuses. If she is not telling somebody and trying to get him help, she's making excuses for the dad. End of story. That's just what it is. And Eric's like, well, she would whisper words of encouragement and, you know, try to cheer him up and tell him, just don't talk back to him or just do what he says. And I'm going to tell you, this literally hurts my mind and my heart that a mother would do that. So now Eric is making the comment that it is just him and his mom against, I guess, the world, you know. So nothing is mentioned in the story, and I found it very odd that throughout the story, the brother's not mentioned very much in this story. And it's not until the end that he is. So I'm just like, okay, so, you know, that little part of you really hopes that the brother is not witnessing these beatings, or, you know, even getting his own beatings, that the dad's just leaving him completely alone. But we're not oblivious to how things work. So the fact of the matter is, the brother is probably not oblivious. He's probably getting beating just as well as Eric. So, you know. So now we hear a story of Eric, and he's in the 3rd grade. Now, I could be wrong, but if I did my math right, or if I thought about back when my kids were in the 3rd grade, this would put him about 8 years old. So, okay. He failed a spelling test, right? And he was supposed, like the teachers do, take it home, show your parents, have them sign it. And he was terrified to bring it home and have his dad sign it. So there's a couple questions in my mind. First of all, what the heck is going on with that hair in my face? Sorry about that. But, okay, so first of all, if he and his mom are that close and it's him and her against the world, why did he not go to her and have her sign this, right? But he didn't. And in the process, because he didn't want to show his father, he decided to forge his father's name. Now, I want to say, he's 8. Maybe 9. But I'm claiming 8. And I don't know, was I thinking of things like that when I was 8? Could have been. It's been a hot minute, so I don't know. But of course, this does not go well, right? I mean, we all can imagine this is not going to go well, and he didn't fool anybody. So the principal ended up calling the dad to tell him what happened, and Dad was furious, just pissed. So not only had he failed a test, which I said earlier, failure's not an option for this guy. He failed a test, but then he lied and tried to cover it up. So the beating he got was excruciating. It was a very long beating. I mean, he was just wailing on this kid. And Eric said, and I quote, where's it at? Got ahead of myself. And I quote, "He used me like a freaking piñata." End quote. Really? I mean, wow. So the beating apparently went on for a very long time. And it only stopped when Dad got a little short of breath and his arm was hurting. So it was just too much to hold his arm up to keep beating his child. Oh, so when his mom got home, so I was wondering about that. And I'm glad she wasn't there, just because it, you know, I would have been like, hello, you're a worse mother than even I thought. But when she got home, he was so bad he had to be put into a tub of ice for all the swelling and everything that was going on. His whole body was just, you know, covered, and he had bruises and whatever. So the bath was going to help that, right? And Eric is saying that while he's in this bath, his mom's helping wash him or whatever. And she leans over and whispers, and I quote, "He has to be stopped. It would be better if he was dead," end quote. So Eric's telling me, you know, he's telling us that, you know, he's so vulnerable at this point. He's in this tub, you know, okay, so even if he's 8, say 9, he's in this tub naked with his mom. Any kid's going to be vulnerable, right? And I'm not saying she did wrong, because he needed attention. Should have probably gone to a hospital or something. She was at least doing something. But he said he was vulnerable, you know, and he hurt, and he's vulnerable sitting in this tub of ice. He hurt everywhere, and he was furious and hating his dad at this moment. He just absolutely hated him. And when his mother keeps telling him that something had to be done about his dad, he starts to listen. Okay, let's rehash this. He's in the 3rd grade. He's maybe 8 years old, like I said. And his mother should be protecting him, not telling him that something needed to be done with his father. I don't even think I can express how many times I wrote down my mind was blown. Just completely blown. So Eric says that incident changed everything for him. And now he wasn't just trying to survive what was happening to him. Now he was going to try to fix what was happening. He said that after his bath, his mom called him into it showed her room. I don't know. Where was the dad? If it was the bedroom, but reenactments are what they are. But anyways, she called him in to have a conversation, just a little chat. And she asked him how they could stop this. And he said it solidified in his mind that he was the one that needed to find a solution, right? That it was going to be up to his little 8-year-old brain to find a solution on how to stop his father. So, as mom is going through scenarios with him, she asked him, out of all the scenarios, I think I have this actually quoted. Let's quote this. Out of all the ways you can kill him, what do you think is the best way, and what do you need to do that? End quote. He's in 3rd grade, and the mom is asking him how he can kill his father. My makeup just looks awful, and I can't even get past that because of how blown away I am at this. I'm just blown away. So I guess mom kind of got tired of waiting for him to come up with a plan. So he was supposed to think of a plan and how he was going to stop his father, but he just didn't come up with anything. And like I said, again, let's just rehash the fact that he's 8. But so mom comes up with this plan. And one day he comes in and he finds his mother in the kitchen. And he says his dad took a lot of vitamins, right? Just took a bunch of them. And she had found these they were called blank capsules that resembled some of the pills that he took. And so she started packing them with, and I quote, everything from rat poison to Valium, end quote. And Eric said he sat and watched her fill these pills and then put them back into his vitamin, or the dad's vitamin bottles so he could take them. So Eric's like, that first night when it happened, they were all like on pins and needles, especially when dad got sick and, wasn't feeling well. He said he was dizzy. I think he started vomiting or whatever. And, Eric's like, we just didn't know. Was he going to die? Was he going to live? Was he going to figure out that they were poisoning? And Eric then says, the reason I helped my mother was that I was raised to protect your family. You defend your family against anyone or anything. And he said his family view had become skewed because now it didn't include his father, that his father was now the enemy that he needed to protect his family from. So we find out that the poisoning doesn't work, but his mother's pretty persistent. She doesn't give up. And she starts to spike, is what Eric called it, spike his food and poison him that way. And Eric said it got really bad because at the kitchen table, you didn't know what was okay to eat and what you shouldn't eat. You didn't know what she had poisoned and what. And the dad never had a clue. Like, never. He thought his wife was so weak that she would never get a backbone to try to kill him. So his mom tried for 7 years to poison her husband. I mean, that's a lot of patience. That's a lot of planning. And especially never to have the husband suspicious, right? So You guys, these eyes look awful, but we're going to move right on because I will sit and pick on them all this whole video. And it's going to be a long enough video without me just doing the same thing over and over, right? All right. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so I have this note here after saying, okay, every time the poisoning attempts would fail, Eric's mother would talk to him and tell him, it's like, you need to be doing something. You need to be, why aren't you doing something? Whatever. Eric says, and he quoted, he said, the poisoning was something that she can say, see, I'm doing what I can. Why haven't you done what you're supposed to do? End quote. And I have noted, mother of the freaking year, ladies and gentlemen. So, yeah, just awful. Just stinking awful. So, when the poisonings never worked, the mom got this great idea that Eric should shoot his father. Yeah. And you know I can't talk and do this at the same time. Kind of hoping that lashes detract from how bad my eyes look. And that's what I get for doing the eyes, as I was so upset. So, as I was saying, the mother wanted Eric to shoot his father and even come up with a plan to help him do it so the father would never see it coming. And I'm going to be honest, I literally thought that when this was starting, that it was going to be like a self-defense type of thing, but it wasn't. It was, she had planned to have Eric wait for him, the dad, by the door and kind of hide behind the door so when he come home and walked in, Eric can shoot him in the back as he was going in. And I mean, I guess she even got him a gun. I don't know where the gun came from. But he said, you know, I was standing there that night that they were going to do it, or he was going to do it. It was never they. He was going to do it, and he's standing there waiting for his father to come home. And he does, and he walks in, and Eric's standing there holding the gun, ready to go, and freezes and can't do it. Said the father walked in, went to the living room, laid down, and took a nap. And he said he literally could not move until he heard his father snoring. So, he was telling his mom, and his mom was just couldn't understand why he couldn't do it, what happened, why he, you know, and whatever. And she just told him, that's fine, you can do it tomorrow or whatever. But he kept saying he thought that he was the man of the house and he had to do something to protect his family. So he wanted to do it, but he was scared, I guess, afraid. And his mother just got tired of waiting for him, and told him. The mother told her son that if he didn't kill his father, she was going to leave and not come back until the father was dead. That she would leave him and his brother by themselves to fend for themselves with their dad. Just going to set that there for a minute and just, I don't even know, I'm not even going to unpack that because I think in of itself that statement just spoke volumes, right? Of how she was manipulating and treating her son. So yeah, we're just going to leave that there. And then Eric comes back and he's telling us on the night that his father died, it came down his mother leaving them. And she left the house and told Eric she would be back in 10 or 15 minutes. And if the father wasn't dead, she would leave and never come back. She would leave for good. So his father was again asleep on the couch. And he stood there at the front of the couch with his gun, pointing it at his father. And still chickening out. He was still scared. He was still frightened and not pulling the trigger. And he stood there that whole 10, 15 minutes until his mom pulled back up in the driveway. And he realized that she come in and the dad wasn't dead. The mom was going to leave him for good, and he was going to have to spend the rest of his life living with his father. And he shot him. So mom came in. As you can imagine, she was extremely happy and pleased and, whatnot. All things a good mother would be, right? And she took the gun from him. And she went to check and make sure her husband was dead. And then she called the cops. And while they were waiting for the police, she wanted to go over their story. And this was the story, and I quote, this is a story from Eric, sorry. Eric was to say, I quote, I found a gun. I tripped carrying it to him, period. It went off. We called the police, end of quote. And I don't know why when I was saying that I added those periods in there. I mean, I guess because it was just so heartless. Like, I found a gun. I tripped when I was taking it to him. It went off. I guess because I could literally see the periods in my head as he was telling the story, and it just blew me away. I just didn't get it. So there was a detective that came in and talked to him and talked to Eric, but of course his mom was present because he is a kid. And Eric says that he just got this feeling that she wasn't proud of him for, finally killing her dad, his dad. So it's really telling to me that he's looking for approval. He's looking for her to be proud, but she's not. She's not proud of him. And it's not until the end when the detective says, okay, it sounds like an accident, that she acted like she was proud of him, that she was happy that he did it, whatnot. Seriously, how backwards is that? So, it was marked an accidental shooting, and Eric got away with it, okay? So he says that he felt numb and indifferent after it happened. It's like he didn't feel guilty. It was something he had to do, something he needed to do, and he did it. Now, he also says, I do know the difference between right and wrong. He says, I do know that murder is wrong. And now we circle back to that comment at the beginning where people are asking him if he feels remorse or he felt bad. And he's like, yes, I do. But he didn't have a viable choice at that moment. So that's a lot to unpack. And I'm not really going to get into unpacking all that because there's always a choice. But I can see at a 15-year-old kid in the situation that he was in might feel like there was no choice. So Eric says, and I quote, I have to get up every day knowing that I took out one of the most important figures in my life, end quote. So he says his goal is to live his life and make it a good one because it cost him a hell of a lot to get it. Yeah, honey. Yeah, it did. So now, and I find this so ballsy of the mother, like I can't even wrap my head around the fact that she did this. But, and it doesn't say how long, so I just have to assume it was shortly after the dad died. The mom moved her and the two kids into a house with the dad's mom. I don't know. It's okay. So everything that the dad's mom, her name was Elaine, and for everything that she knows, it was an accidental shooting, and at no point does Eric say, you know, she treated him different or he acted different around her or anything like that. But I'm just going to say that would be extremely hard. That would have been hard for Elaine. That would have been hard for Eric. And it should have been hard for, you know, their mom, but apparently it wasn't. But yeah, they move in, and I just like, I just couldn't. I could not. I totally forgot to put primer on. Oh well. I could not get past the audacity of the mom. It is just like, anyways. So Eric says, you know, his father's mother's name's Elaine. Everybody called her Grandma. And from everything he could tell, his mom and Grandma got along really well. They smoked the same kind of cigarettes, they drank the same kind of drinks, and they would sit outside and smoke and drink and enjoy each other and each other's company. So he said you know, as far as he knew, there was nothing wrong. And at this point in their life, their dad's gone. He was the physical threat, right? He was the one that made their life a living hell. They should have been able to move on and be happy and start their life over and look towards future. But he says his mother just couldn't or wouldn't settle and just have a nice life. So one day he walks in on his mother making a drink for Elaine and spiking it with something. So she was poisoning her. And Eric's like, I just didn't understand. And I'm asking her, why are you doing this? What's going on? And he's like, I don't even know what answer she gave me. He said it really didn't even matter what answer she gave me, because there was nothing that she could say that would make what she was doing right. You know, and he says, you know, my father was a physical threat. He physically hurt us. He's like, there is no way Elaine was a physical threat or would hurt them. So he struggled with it. I mean, he struggled a lot with it. He didn't struggle with shooting his father, which he'd been abused. It's, you know, I'm not justifying any of it, but I'm just saying he didn't struggle with the father. He felt the father was justified, right? He did not feel like Grandma was. So he knew that his mother would not risk her own neck. So, like, he knew that if he'd not been there to pull the trigger and kill his father, his mother would have never done it. She would have just kept poisoning him until he died or just living with him. And he knew that eventually that was going to be what happened to Elaine. He knew his mother was going to want him to kill Elaine, and he couldn't do that. So he decided he needed a way out. He had to get out. There was something seriously wrong with his mom, and he didn't want to be any part of what she had planned for Elaine. So he decided to join the Navy. And he says he didn't even make it through boot camp before it started to unravel. He said one day he calls his mom just to check in, and she's telling him, she says, there's been an accident. Your brother and I need you to come home and help us. And then she tells him that Elaine is dead. So at this point, he realizes he left to try to save Elaine, not even considering that his mom would just get his younger brother to do it. And yeah, nope, that didn't cross my mind either. Like I said, the brother's been kind of non-existent in this whole story. So, anyways. So he received permission from the Navy to go home. And at this point, we don't know where he's at in the Navy. We will find out. And we don't know where he lives, and I didn't find out until I Googled it. So he goes home. And when he gets there, his mother takes him downstairs to the basement. And there's this freezer, one of those big, tall, stand-up freezers. And he's like, and it's got chains and a padlock that you need a key in it. And he says, and his mom just undid it all and opened it up. And inside were full of like trash bags. And Eric says, and I quote, 40 bags of grandma, end quote. So we don't know how grandma died, but we do know that she's hacked up and in this freezer, right? I'm not going to lie, that seriously just blew my mind when he said 40 bags of grandma. I'm like, okay. But, you know, in the wonderful tradition of being the mother of the year, she blames Eric for this mess. Because he wasn't there to do it, and the brother had to do it instead. And now look at the mess they got. So basically, she convinced the brother to kill him. The brother apparently made a mess of things. They called Eric home to clean it up and fix it, and it's all Eric's fault. Just love this woman. I don't know about you, but just love to get my hands around her neck. Anyways. He didn't know how he was supposed to fix it. His mom told him, you need to fix this, you need to fix this, and he had no idea. How do you fix something like that, right? So he tells him, he says, well, what we need to do is act like everything's okay. Like Elaine is alive and just went on vacation, right? Okay. I mean, seriously, he had to know something like that would only last so long. But he's like, I'm getting the hell out of here. You know, he basically is like, I was done. I was headed back to the Navy and got in my truck and started driving back to San Diego, which is where he was at boot camp. Okay. Which confused me why he's out in California for boot camp, because when you find out where he lives, I would have thought there'd been somewhere a whole lot closer, but that is neither here nor there, nor does it have anything to do with the story. So he drives across country, and he said he was somewhere in Tennessee when, and again, I was very confused why he was in Tennessee. I'm telling you, there's not much about this that makes a whole lot of sense. But he was in Tennessee, and he started smelling something funny. So he got out, and he got out of his truck and started looking around, and noticed there was this cooler in his, the back of his truck. Opened it up, and there's the bags of grandma in a cooler that his mother put in the back of his truck and didn't tell him. So he's driving across country with grandma and had no idea. And so he decides he's just going to keep on keeping on, because, you know, he didn't know, was I supposed to drop it? What was I supposed to do? Okay. And he didn't want someone else to find it, which at first I thought, okay, he just doesn't want some innocent kid to find it, but I don't know. And he said he gets, he's on his way. He doesn't say if he's still in Tennessee or for wherever he's at. He gets pulled over. Of course, now this is my kind of luck, and why I won't try to commit something like this, because, again, this is my kind of luck. So he doesn't say what he got pulled over for, but the cop's pretty suspicious. And I would think, okay, he doesn't say this, but I'm thinking, you know, you found it because you smelled the dead body. So the cop pulls you over and you're saying he was suspicious. Would it not be because he could smell the body too? I don't know. That's interesting theory, right? So the cops pulled him over, and he's questioning what's in the back of his truck, what's in the cooler, etc., etc. So he's questioning the cooler, and he's poking around the truck, and Eric says, I thought I was done. I thought it was over. I thought it was done. The cop was either going to shoot me, or I was going to have to shoot the cop, and to prevent them from finding this body. And I struggled with that. I'm like, okay, that seems kind of out of character. But then he makes the comment, he was so far in, there was no turning back. You know, he was just so far into this, thanks to his mom, that he literally thought that was what he was going to have to do. I don't know. However, in a situation that would never have happened to me, he got lucky because a car flew by him, and the cop gave up the initial search of the truck and got in his car and pursued the speeder. And Eric said, I wasn't going to wait around for him to return, so off I went. He said, when I got to, and it's not funny, I'm sorry, it's not, but okay, seriously, that is not the kind of luck I would have. No way, shape, or form would I consider that I would get lucky enough that if I was trying to hide a body, that someone would speed by, unless it was Smokey and the Bandit and you've got a blocker, you know, like your bandit that's there to block you. No way would I think that would happen. So I'm not chuckling because it's funny. I'm chuckling because it's just one of those ironies in life that, you know, you're getting ready to find a dead body, but then something happens and you're saved. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Anyways, so he tells us that, you know, when he gets to San Diego, did I say this? I don't remember that. He got to San Diego and he rented a storage unit and he put the cooler in the storage unit and tried to get back to his life. And, you know, I don't even know if he had all 40 bags of Grandma. I mean, it just says, you know, what was in that cooler. And it looked like it was a decent sized cooler, but it didn't look like it was enough to carry the 40 bags, considering they had them in the stand-up freezer and it was full. Now you get this, like, Coleman cooler that you're supposed to believe that Grandma's in. Anyway, I digress because I just don't know, so I can't get too much theory about it because it'll be wrong. So, where am I at? He tells us he went a couple weeks without talking to his mom, and he was really hoping that things had died down. She wouldn't contact him. Maybe things were getting better, but she shows up at his door in San Diego. Things aren't getting better, honey. She was having trouble explaining where Elaine went. Because, yes, she's not returned back from vacation. There was family questioning where she was at and what she was doing, and she could not come up with any excuses anymore. So she fled. Not suspicious at all. But she fled and went to San Diego and, you know, again was blaming Eric, saying it was all his fault and they had to run. They needed to run. They were going to run to the border and hide. And he's like, I was going to get in my car, or I was going to abandon the Navy and head for the border with my family. So that was the plan. That was the go. But Mom wanted to stop in at, which one am I supposed to be using? Mom was wanting to stop in at the bank first. No explanation. I mean, I just assumed she needed some running away cash, right? But she wanted to stop at the bank first, and the cops were waiting for them. So they were arrested. Now, he shows us this picture of him being arrested and his mom behind him. And he says that the whole time that in this picture, she's whispering to him, don't say anything. What was it? Not to say anything. Do not cooperate with the cops. Let's see how it... what was it? See... Not to say anything, not to cooperate with the cops, to see how it played out. So he's like, I didn't cooperate with the cops. Mom told me not to, and I didn't cooperate with the cops. And I'm just like, honey, quit protecting your mom, right? Quit protecting her. But I don't know how long in between this was. I had first thought that maybe Eric was 7 years older than his brother, but that didn't pan out for me. And the reason I was thinking that is because I thought he was like 22 in the Navy, and actually it turns out he was younger. And it turns out that the brother was 15 when the mom convinced him to kill Elaine. Actually, I take that back, because in the story, the Evil Lives Here story, he says that his brother was 15, but it turns out he was actually 14 when he killed his grandmother. So that's beside the point, right? That's all to do with nothing. So, poor brother, which I still don't have a name. I won't have a name till the end of this show on the brother. But within an hour of being picked up, he starts talking. He's telling them everything. He's singing like a canary. And Eric's like, I don't blame him. This is when you find out he was 15 years old. And, he was scared. He was just a 15-year-old scared kid, is what Eric says. So now, Eric tells us that Eric is saying whatever the cops want him to say. It's everything. Whatever they want to hear, he's telling them everything he knows. Mom went and hired a top-class attorney. So, kids, her sons don't have an attorney, but she's got this top-rated attorney, and they're blaming everything on Eric. And Eric is still not cooperating. It's still not in his head that he should maybe flip and cut a deal and whatever. He says, as a child, he promised to do everything he could to take the fall and protect the family. And now it's 7 years later. So this is why I thought he was older, because he was 15, and now it's 7 years later. But none of it worked out. I don't know. So now we're 7 years later, and he's expected to break that promise. And it was not easy for him. He said it was actually one of the hardest decisions he had to make to, break that promise to his mother and actually testify against her. So now it tells us Hilma Marie Witt, she goes by Marie, was sentenced to 90 years for murder and conspiracy. Eric and his brother both served 11 years. Okay. So Eric says, and I quote, "I'm never going to say it's my mother's fault that I shot my father, because in the end, I made a choice." End quote. And that's very, very powerful. He says his mother was evil, and everyone that associated with her paid the price, whether it was with their life or in some other way. But anybody associated with Miss Marie paid the price. So now, that was the end of that story. And it was I don't know about y'all, I was hooked from the beginning, but there was so much more I needed to know. So Mr. Google and I have become close friends. And we're just going to share what we found. And I want to say, as soon as I typed in Eric Witt into the search box, I was really surprised the first article I found was from the History Channel, history.com. And the reason it surprised me, because I always Google every episode and never have seen something from the History Channel. And this was titled, This Day in History. So, made some pretty interesting headlines. And the story was written in September 1st, 1981. And it's the actual first time I hear anything about a time frame about when all this happened. But I don't know where it took place. I still don't know where they live. But I learned a lot on this episode, and I wanted to share it with you. Or reading this article, and I wanted to share it with you. And I need to be right back. Okay, to explain why I just jumped up like a lunatic. I did not write down who, if there was somebody, I wanted to give credit to whoever wrote this. And let's see what it says. If there's anything on there. Come on, Google. Let me see who wrote this. Okay, it doesn't say. But it was a History Channel, and it was an article on, says, the title says, a teenage boy murders his father. And it was this day in history, September 1, 1981. So, yeah, I don't know who wrote it, but let's just talk about it. I find out in this episode that the father's name is Paul. You know, he went through this whole episode and he never told me his brother's name, his mother's name, or his father's name. And yes, I said told me because I needed to know these things. But Paul was 43 when Eric murdered him. And apparently a volunteer firefighter, which I don't know about you all, but I thought volunteer firefighters didn't get paid. So what did he do for a living? I don't know. Mr. Google didn't tell me. Find out they live in Indiana. I'm thinking it was up towards Michigan. I think the name of the city was Michigan City, actually. Michigan City, Indiana. I'm not familiar with that far up in Indiana, so I don't know anything about it. And it literally, the story on here about the accidental shooting and it being ruled an accident is pretty much word for word from what Eric has told us. But there's some changes. I won't say changes. There's some things that are conveniently left out. I learned that it's only 3 years later Elaine is murdered. So Eric would be 18 because he was 15 when he murdered his father. 3 years later, they're living with Elaine and the brother murders her. Elaine was 74 and was killed by a crossbow. And I read that and I'm like, a crossbow? Okay, so first of all, how do you claim that's an accident? I guess you could. It could accidentally just... but you use a crossbow when you're hunting or something, and I can't imagine Elaine's going to be out in the middle of the woods so you can accidentally shoot her. I don't know. I don't know what their thought process was. I just don't know. Okay. It just seemed very random that it was a crossbow. So a few months after the murder, the whole family was arrested in California. And they got arrested because when they went to the bank, Marie had been forging Elaine's signature on her Social Security checks. So they were able to find her that way and get arrested. So the younger brother's name is John. And he was 14 when he killed Elaine, not 15. Like I said, Eric had said 15. This is saying he was actually 14. It was probably close. I don't know. Honestly, we get to the point where I sometimes have to literally do math in my head to figure out my brother's ages. I can understand not getting that right. And Marie convinced John to kill Elaine, saying that Elaine was going to kick them out of their house. I mean, I guess, Paul beating the hell out of them all she didn't have to come up with a good excuse to convince Eric to murder him. But that was the best you could do on why to kill Elaine. And even 15, even young and impressionable, 15. Do you think that's good enough reason to kill somebody? I want to go with no. It didn't sound. Okay. So, awful. It says that John witnessed his father being shot. So he was there when Eric shot his dad, and he knew it wasn't accidental. And there's only 3 years age difference between the brothers, which is what I was just saying. Eric's 18 at this point. John's 14, 15, or 18, 19. I don't know. Somewhere around there, there's 3 years difference. John is said to say, and during the trial, John said, because he also testified against his mom, and that's how him and Eric got the same sentences. John says, and I quote, "My mom said I could strangle her or use my crossbow. It was up to me." So that's how the crossbow was decided. So John and Eric were given 20 and 5-year sentences and served 11 of those. And I believe it says they got out in 1996. So on the next page I pulled up, called the Cinemaholic, it gives us this information, and I'm going to read directly from it. So I quote, "Hilma Marie Witt was found guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit murder in the case of Elaine Witt. For this, she received a 90-year prison sentence. Following this, she was sentenced to a concurrent prison term of 50 years for the murder of her husband. While in jail, she earned a college degree. In 2000, Hilma's petition for sentence modification was denied." Oops, sorry. I'm trying to do this without blocking the screen, and it didn't work. Currently, Hilma Marie Witt is incarcerated at the Indiana Women's Prison, and her earliest possible release can happen in 2027, according to police records, end quote. And I think I saw, and again, the math, I don't, in 2017, she was like 50 years old, 51, 52, somewhere around there. That's just something I saw. I don't know for sure because none of it, I just couldn't find anything else. So that is the mother, Marie, and I literally could not find anything about John Butch. They called him Butch Witt. I pulled up a couple John Butch. I had an obituary, but it wasn't him. I had a couple other things, but I could not figure out where he was at and what he was doing. And I was like, come on, I need an update. Where you at? What's going on? But I didn't get one, alas. So that is the terrible story of Eric Witt and his father Paul and the mother Marie and their brother John. And this is an instance where parents really, I was going to say framed. It's not really framed, but they formed these children in their lives and what happened to them from then on out. And do I think the kids at 15 years old could have had some common sense? Yes. But I wasn't there. I'm not the situation. And thank God it wasn't my children. Anyways, let me know what you think. This was an interesting one for me. Yeah, it was interesting. So let me know what you think. I'd love to hear it. Like and share, and please subscribe to my channel. And until next time, guys, goodbye.